Remember this? Here's a bigger one.
Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. This week on the podcast, we are talking, of course, about Dune Part 2.
Yeah, so something that you were fortunate enough to see last week?
The week before last. Well, it depends what you count as last week. But a little while ago, we were very kindly given a couple of tickets to a press screening at the IMAX in London, which
was very exciting.
Which is very exciting, but very unfortunate for James, being a Manchester-based man.
I was busy educating the next generation of filmmakers, Lily, so unfortunately, needs must.
Yes, very important work.
Absolutely. So, Lily, you've just been to see it a second time, haven't you, today, as we record, hot off the press?
Well, yeah, because I loved it so much. And also I was aware that by the time we were going to be recording, it would be like over a week. I was like, I need it to be fresh in my mind. And what about you? You saw it last night?
I saw it last night at a completely packed out screening at the View Printworks IMAX, like the second biggest IMAX in the UK. And it was a blast to see it with a full house, really.
And what was the audience like? What was the vibe, the energy?
Oh, unfortunately, a little muted for my taste. I have to say, I've been to the View Printworks quite a few times where it's been busy and very full, and it's quite a restrained crowd, quite a reserved crowd, which is a shame, really.
Right, because so when I went to see it the first time round, there was so much energy. Everyone was so excited. I think the fact that it was an audience of people seeing it early, there was so much excitement in the air, and the audience were so responsive to everything. Every joke Javier Bardem made, everyone was like in hysterics. There's a bit later on in the film where someone is slighted and everyone went, ooh. And there was another bit where something kind of dramatic happened and everyone, but it was kind of a double cross and you're surprised. Can you tell that I'm trying very hard not to spoil anything, guys? This is going to be spoiler free, just like the title says. And everyone went, oh, they kind of made these like really, it was hilarious because they were interesting noises. They weren't just like, it was like, there was like a lot of meaning behind them, But then when I watched it today, it was just like in your experience, very subdued, only a few giggles. People weren't laughing the way they had been and reacting. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah. Like when I was watching Dune last night, I remember thinking these are clearly moments that, I actually thought they were funny and I was kind of half chuckling to myself, but it didn't translate across to the room. I remember thinking, this is clearly meant to get a laugh. This whole moment, especially like say Stilgar, is much, he's played slightly more for comedy than by Javier Bardem. Yeah, he's clearly got moments that are funny, but the room wasn't really biting for it, or wasn't taking the bait.
I wonder if that's because they weren't expecting it, because I think my big takeaway from Dune Part 2 was that in this film they're trying to do a lot more different things than in the first one. I feel like in the first one, it was played quite straight. The focus was on setting it up and kind of establishing this as a very different kind of movie to like David Lynch's Dune back in the 80s. You know? This is a classy movie. This is epic. This is chic and stylish. And let us introduce you to this quite complex world of these different planets, Arrakis, etc. Whereas in this one, it was like, okay, we've done the setup. We know where we are. Let's have a bit more fun with it. Let's crack a load of jokes. Let's have the romance. Let's have the kind of BDSM inclined Harkonnen vibe that I absolutely was obsessed with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think maybe the audience just weren't prepared for that.
Possibly, yeah. It could be that as well. But I just find, like I say, I've been to a lot of different films at View Printworks and just think it's a tough crowd at the View Printworks IMAX,
They have very exacting standards.
Obviously so. So shall we get into what we thought of it?
Please, James, let me throw the question back to you. What are your
goddamn trickster?
What are your thoughts?
Like a Benny Gesserit using the voice on me. Give me your thoughts. Yes. Sorry.
I would love to be a Benny Jesuit. They've got it down.
You are, Lily. You are. So what is it? I mean, I loved it, but I had some reservations that I couldn't put my finger on.
Oh my God, I knew it. I knew that there was a hot take coming because you were notably silent today on WhatsApp. Like,
I was saving it for the pod, Lily. Saving it for the pod.
I mean, know, but you're in general, even though you save it, you will give me some kind of enthusiastic nod when you've had a good time at the cinema.
I had a good I had a great time at the cinema. This is sorry. Sorry for having any kind of opinion that isn't just flattering praise. It's like, no, I had a great time. It's a superb film. One of the best sequels of any kind of film ever done. It doesn't drop the ball too much. But I was trying to put my finger on what I was missing, Lily. And you've basically, in our little chat just now, you've kind of summed up the thing I was missing. I realized I actually missed the world building. I missed discovering all these places because then once there was a lot of time on the desert, I was actually like, I want to get away from the desert, but it's all Paul's training and him becoming a better warrior. But that's not to the detriment of the film. It was just almost the scene's been set now, and I enjoyed discovering them in the first film. And there's no way they could replicate that.
I can understand that. I actually really didn't feel that way. And I love a bit of world building because I really enjoyed learning more about the kind of underground layers of Arrakis and the world that unfolds there. That I found the way that was shot, I found very moving and atmospheric, especially in IMAX.
Yeah, beautiful cinematography. Well, Lily mentioned the IMAX. So I remember a couple of years ago I was talking about Dune Part 1 and you very casually said to me, and by the way, I need to be careful how I frame this. This is this next conversation isn't to the denigration of small independent cinemas. I love small independent cinemas, but some horses for courses, certain films are made for certain places. And he said to me, I went to see it at the Genesis, I think you said, or something like that. And he said, it was fine. I was like, or something of that ilk. Am I misremembering it, Lily? Am I misquoting
well, I'm only
there?
shaking my head because it wasn't the Genesis. It was an electric cinema.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, equivalent. They're much of a muchness. But that was before we had a podcast, James. So I didn't know. I knew nothing then. It was like the equivalent of Paul on Atreides. I think I know about life and film and what is good for me, but until you get into the correct kind of cinema, until you're on Arrakis, you figure out, I knew nothing before, and now with the guidance of wise Fremen, I've found my calling.
Now you've drunk the blue juice, so you've seen what cinema can really be.
You know what? I actually have, because my hot take from seeing it at the Dolby today was I preferred IMAX.
There we go. There we go, ladies and gents. Tell me why. I'm interested.
Well, see, I don't know if it's just because of where I was sat, but the Dolby I saw was in Leicester Square, and it's a very big cinema with 2 layers of seats, and I didn't know any of this. I just picked what looked like quite the one good seat, like in the middle kind of thing, but it was very near the back. You're so far away from the screen. I didn't like that at all. I don't know if being closer up would have been better, but then you're kind of on the ground level, right? So I was like, I actually peered down at the end. I went to the front of the balcony and peered down to try and get a sense of whether or not that would have been better. Do you think would it have been better?
Maybe, yeah, I think so. I've sat in both places, and the best place I think is the Royal Box, because you've got a perfect sight line straight across to the screen, but you are quite far away from the screen because
I don't want to be that far away.
Yeah, exactly. I'm completely with you. That's why I recommended the other Dolby Theatre, as we since realised.
Yeah,
it's so
upsetting.
It's so annoying because it isn't clear at all on their websites what's going on there. You kind of yeah.
So yeah, just for clarity for anyone who cares about this stuff, hopefully some of our listeners, as it is becoming the dominant part of our conversations. But there are 2 Dolbys on Leicester Square, and I got confused, or I just didn't remember this quite important, but yes, thing that is not made clear on the Odeon website, because they're both Odeon Dolbys, right?
Yeah, and they're both in Leicester Square.
ridiculous. And so
But separate buildings.
right. And so the one I went to was this massive one. And so is the other one, the West End one, that is what it's called.
Yeah.
Is that a smaller, you'll be
Much smaller.
Damn it.
Yeah, with nice raked seating, so you've got a really nice seat. Because the other one, the one you went into, is a beautiful picture palace, but it's like really old. The building's spectacular, but it's an old building that wasn't designed for like high tech cinema experiences.
Yeah, and you're right. I was so annoyed because despite it being such a big cinema, my view was blocked by the guy sat in front of me a bit. I had to sit at a bit of an angle. I was like, are you kidding me? So maybe I will try this other Dolby because the seats were very comfortable. I will say that. More comfortable than the IMAX, the View IMAX from last week.
They're super duper comfy, the ones in Leicester Square. The ones in the West End aren't as comfy, I'm afraid, Lily.
Oh, God.
You can't have everything.
Oh, I hate this. Why can't they just give me what I want?
You have this game where it's like somebody's head, midriff, and legs, and you can interchange them all, right? Like, I want to do that for your perfect cinema setup.
Is that called Consequences? I'm not sure.
I'll take the seat from the Leicester Square and the screen. Anyway, sorry, back to Dune. Back to Dune.
Yes, back to Dune. So, but tell me more. So that was the thing that you were missing. But overall, were you riveted?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was completely gripped. I was completely into it. Sorry, it is hard to say. The only thing that didn't quite work for me is something that there's no way on earth they could have replicated, which is that feeling of exploring the universe for the very first time. But I loved how they opened it up. Like, I loved seeing the Harkonnen military base of operations. And
I loved seeing that.
Yeah. And I absolutely loved the black and white arena battle. And I love just the little touch of the fact that anything that's under the sunlight is in black and white, and then anything that's out of the direct light of the sun, the color comes back into it. So it's like, it's the light from the sun that's making everything black and white, and then you just see color fading back in as things recede away from the sun into the background, which was beautiful.
I didn't even notice that, James.
I was obsessed with that. That is art.
When that scene came back round, as it were, when I was watching it the second time, I was like, yes, here it is again, because I was so kind of in rapture when I watched it the first time round. Like in IMAX, that was just epic. And it was just so this is when we're introduced to Austin Butler's character, who is the Baron's nephew. And I was so happy to see him in this role because I read an interview with Stellan Skarsgård, who plays the Baron, and he talked about how the first scene he did with Austin Butler, he couldn't help but laugh because he seemed to be enjoying playing this evil guy so much. Like he was relishing it so much, it was kind of funny. And you really get that sense. And he apparently he studied the first Dune and studied how Stellan Skarsgård spoke so he could replicate that, which I didn't even notice when I was watching it the first time. He was just such a good character, but I really noticed it the second time round. And it's so true. He is, we laugh about him and his Elvis impression that, hung around long after the film had been made and come out. But he is very, very good at voices because he really does seem like a relative of the Baron. It's really impressive.
He was excellent casting in it. I mean, I thought all the new cast additions, I thought Lea Seydoux in a very small role, still she has such a great
screen presence. And just to bring it back to that scene, I think we talked about this with the first Dune, but the way that the cinematography is used to color each place, the way that each planet has its own kind of colorscape, and how that echoes the characters, the people who live there. Like we said, this world building, the black and whiteness of the Harkonnens, it carries through to everything. The things they wear, the fact that there are these hairless women who stand around with black mouths and get killed arbitrarily. It all follows through. I love it.
Yeah, and one thing about how they shot that arena sequence, I was reading about it, that Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, he shot it using a camera that was made for filming infrared light. So it was picking up light on the infrared spectrum, which we can't see with our own eyes. And that's why you've got that ghostly white look to everyone's faces. It's picking up light that we don't see in the infrared stuff. And our faces, I think, reflect quite a lot of that infrared light, but we wouldn't see it, but the camera picks it up. So that's why you get this. So it's almost like this translucent kind of ghostly white glow that's coming off everyone's faces when you in those black and white sequences.
So good. So clever.
Absolutely, yeah. But I love that sequence. That was a standout part of the film for me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And gave you a nice break from all those desert scenes you were sick of.
Absolutely. Get me off planet. Get me to some crazy new planets, please. There we go.
I did actually, as someone who doesn't particularly enjoy that kind of thing of a long time watching someone train to become a good fighter or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds like totally not your thing.
Yeah, it's not my thing. But I felt like they didn't actually spend too much time with that. Those scenes where ostensibly that was what was happening were actually being used for other things. So love story with Zendaya, which very cute, very happy to see that, adorable. And the kind of stuff that's going on with his mother, you know. The thing I really want to talk about is the, again, no spoilers, but the kind of ongoing question that's toyed with about this notion of a messiah versus a false prophet, and the idea of, you know, having faith in something external that will save you or being self-reliant and your own savior. I thought that was a very interesting subject to be considered throughout the film.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fascinating core concept of the book, is that how much is he a genuine messiah figure? How much is it just the path has been laid by the Bene Gesserit? And also, maybe that's just how these kind of messiah figures throughout history have worked to some degree anyway, that it's essentially like a PR campaign, or it's people behind the scenes trying to orchestrate some power. But yeah, I love it. Those are the bits of the film as well that I found particular highlights whenever we were getting into that territory.
Anytime we were with the Harkonnens, I was happy. I was having a good time. Loved them being so disgusting. Because they were like brutal, but in this, like I said, it was this kind of BDSM-y. They're really savoring it, and they're all in like these black harnesses and stuff, like leather harnesses.
I mean, they're sadistic, aren't they? They're sadistic people. And I love that they did this in the first film and they did it in the second film. That they have a shot of when Rabban's walking along and it's like at waist height, the camera, and you see these coiled up whip. And they do the exact same shot in the second film as well. It's almost like it's just a nice quick symbol of like they're so brutal they carry whips around with them.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But that aside, the other thing I really enjoyed was seeing Lady Jessica, Paul's mother, Rebecca Ferguson plays her, kind of devolving into this like quite dark character. That kind of journey that she goes on in the film is like very, very enjoyable to watch. I mean, it was quite a dramatic change from how she was at the very start of the film to what she becomes. But I loved, she was equally as weird. Like it was almost quite camp, you know? Like it was so theatrical, so over the top. And yeah, it just made me very happy to see that. I was like, this is what I was here for. Like the first Dune I really enjoyed, but the way it was so stylish and minimal in a way, it did always, I felt like, teeter on the edge of becoming quite dull. And I'm like, yes, now we've got some real weirdness. This is all coming through.
Yeah.
So there was an article I read where Denis Villeneuve is quoted as saying that he's not into script writing. He wishes he could make films with no dialogue at all. He thinks that film is all about cinematography. Yeah, so I wanted to hear your thoughts on this, James, and what you thought of the dialogue in Dune 2 Part 2.
My thoughts are I couldn't agree with Denis Villeneuve any more than is humanly possible. I completely agree with you. You know, not every film it should be a cinematic experience where it's all about the pictures and the sound and the feel of it. That's not what I'm saying, but certainly I totally get it. For me, it's way more interesting to either be involved with making or with watching something where the focus has been on the experience of being at the cinema, less so than just what is the dialogue. I mean, I found the dialogue to be okay. I didn't particularly... You know, like with the first Dune, I thought the dialogue was, for me, it did the trick. It was neither particularly amazing, but also I wasn't pulled out of the story wondering about a clunky line.
I felt that there were a few lines that were well, edging being a bit clunky, but it's such a good cast. So everyone delivered them with the gusto that they needed to get away with it.
The requisite gusto.
I think it particularly particularly Timothée Chalamet's performance, I felt like he, out of everyone, had some quite difficult lines to deliver.
Yeah.
And he did manage to just about get away with it, because when he's becoming a bit more grandiose, it's like, oh, okay. But that's always the challenge with these kinds of epic movies, because you can't speak normally when you're doing things that are so grand.
On the back of a worm.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned the riding of the back of the worm, because I want to just touch on that for a moment as well. I felt like the thing with the riding on the back of the worm was that loomed quite large in the advertising for this film. In the kind of marketing was like, you're finally going to see Paul Atreides riding a worm. And I just felt like, I don't think any of us really were here for that. Like, I don't think we came to see him ride a worm. That to me is like the least significant moment in the film. And yet it's given so much weight, And then he did it. And don't get me wrong, I was very happy for him. Okay, no, that's not a spoiler. We saw that in the trailer. It's not pertinent to the plot, right?
Yeah, they showed the 6-minute sequence where he rides his first worm as a promotional thing throughout the past few months as well. So
yeah,
maybe it's just because it's a good visual to hang the film on. It's like, hey, look, here's a big worm. Remember the big worm from the last film? It's like a fairly just like, remember this? Here's a bigger one.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, actually, when thinking about the first film and what we were saying about it being less weird. That was probably the weirdest element, the campus thing that came in, right? It was the reveal of the big worm. So I guess it was quite nice to like follow it through. That's something I have to say, this is like the most wonderfully built world. Like, kudos to the author of those books. Tell me his name.
Frank Herbert.
That's it. Kudos to Frank, because there is a kind of continuity throughout every element that I find incredibly pleasing. Like the internal logic of how the Fremen live their life and how they conserve water and what that means for everything they do, how they live their lives. It's just so satisfying to see.
Yeah, and the tech is so nicely done. All the different devices, like you only see it for the first time in this film, where they extract the water from dead people so they can take their water, and it's fascinatingly realized.
Totally.
I loved as well with Princess Irulan, the Emperor's daughter, that she's making like a little like a recording of a diary, and it's like a very old school, it's almost like a wax cylinder affair, it's like a steampunk version of future tech. That's what I love, is that everything looks very ancient and that gives it this gravitas, and yet it's all very high tech. Well, it's in the story, in the books, it's made very clear that AI has been outlawed, so we do have this kind of hybrid high technology society, yet it seems very basic. To me, it didn't seem basic. It seemed very, very advanced. I just didn't. No, but the computers behind it are very utilitarian. It's more about switches and buttons. You never really have a computer going, analog. Here you go, sir. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's like this analog version of technology. Okay, I love that. I love that isn't actually ever explained. That's just like that's quite cool to go into it and not know that, and because it all makes sense. You don't need that explanation, but that is an interesting element. Absolutely, that's what I liked about watching the film. I was like, they haven't actually spelt out what's going on here. It's just it's just a texture to the world that you don't need to know that to just appreciate the world, and it still feels pretty solid. Totally. So, as someone who's read the books, in general, how do you think this film stands up as an adaptation? Like near flawless, basically. Like as far as the spirit, what I imagine the characters to be like, how it should all go, how it should all be presented on the screen. Yeah, it's like an incredibly well realized adaptation of a book. You can see that everybody involved loved this source material. I mean, Hans Zimmer said like it was his favorite book as a child was Dune, so like you can see that there's a lot of the core creative talent absolutely love what they're doing, and it comes across on the screen. Absolutely. The only thing that I did think was a little bit of a shame was, again, no spoilers, but there are certain elements of the film that
I think would have had a bit more gravitas, a bit more power if it wasn't for the fact that Star Wars came before. And obviously that story and that film is so influenced by Dune, right? Like George Lucas was a big fan.
Yeah, there are parts that feel a bit like, oh, this feels a little bit like a like ripped off from Star Wars, or like a more like primitive version of Star Wars. Then you realize, well, actually, yeah, it came first, and Star Wars was definitely quote unquote inspired by a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. So there were a few things where I thought, God, you kind of almost don't even need this because it doesn't have the same oomph that it would have done because we're so used to certain tropes in these kinds of films. But once I reminded myself of that, I'm like, oh, well, that's a shame, but what can you do?
Yeah, but it's almost like because it's been done to such high quality, that to me makes me not worry about it too much.
Yeah, I think because this film aesthetically it could not be more different from Star Wars. It's a world apart that I think it's fine because they're kind of, the influence is clear and, they're kind of in conversation with each other in certain senses, but
the execution, very, very different, very different.
Yeah, and also with the dialogue, there are these funny lines, and I do like that Paul's time with the Fremen, you get to feel like these are real people living in a community rather than archetypes and these big, powerful characters that are doing stuff in the universe. So that I think that was done well, but there isn't the same kind of like zippy humor that there is in like a Star Wars movie. Say that, they don't have the same quips and stuff. So there's a very different feel.
Star Wars definitely feels like space fantasy. It feels like a slightly fantasy world. And even though I'm not going to say Dune feels real, because it doesn't, but it almost has a bit more of a grounded quality to it. Like, if I fell into Star Wars world, even though obviously it would be bad if Darth Vader was coming after me, I think in general it might be quite fun. If I got dropped into Dune world, I'd be like, this is fucking awful, get me out of here.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's quite bleak. I mean, Caladan looked nice, but even then it seemed a bit basic. I don't know, it's less of an aspirational fantasy world.
In a way, but also seeing how the Fremen have learned to deal with the environment they live in, they clearly have made the most of their life, which is very reflective of humankind on this planet, right? People have lived in lots of adverse conditions, and human beings find a way to live there and enjoy their life and build community. So I really love seeing that in the film because you're right, that feels very grounded and real to me. That's just how human beings are.
Yeah, and I did like the Fremen tribes actually. Like just the kind of interplay and the banter between them felt quite natural. Very well directed, that I thought.
Definitely. Yeah, big thumbs up for me. I have had such a good time watching this film.
Oh, I'll definitely be going to see it another 3 times minimum for sure.
Can we just talk about? Clearly, there's going to be another film, right? It's inevitable. I believe that Denis Villeneuve has the rights to the whole Dune back catalogue.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I'd read that he said on record that he's only got one more film that he's interested in doing for Dune.
Yes, I know. I've heard that, but I do believe he has purchased the whole franchise. I might be wrong, but that's what I read. So I think he may have one more in him, but maybe the studio that he's working for,
Warner Brothers. So maybe he'll be the exec producer and he'll produce the other director's work. I don't know. Yeah, but
that would be a shame. I hope that doesn't happen. I want him to do them all. But then it does get a lot weirder, right?
Yeah. I can't remember if I'm on book 4 or book 5, but after book 2, it's just cut your losses. It's sad because all of the potential of the first book just kind of gets squandered. The second book, it's more like a coda, the second book. So rather than it being like another big Dune-esque epic narrative, it's a bit smaller story. And then from the third book onwards, the writing's not very good. The plots aren't smart. It just loses what made it special, which is a shame. Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah. And I can see why Denis Villeneuve would say he'll do the second book and then that's it, because I don't think there's much of a spoiler, but from the third book onwards, there's a time jump, which means that all of the original cast just is history.
Oh, I wish he'd do his own thing with it rather than sticking to the books thing, because I love this world. I want to carry on. I want to explore, because there was definitely a hint.
Well, they are they're making a TV series of the Bene Gesserit.
Oh no, that sounds rubbish.
Now that I'm well interested into.
A TV show though.
of the Bene Gesserit. It's like, yeah, great. I want like a kick-ass Bene Gesserit detective going around trying to track down rogue versions of the Lisan El Gaib, and she does karate as well, and she uses the voice like.
I would happily follow Léa Seydoux around with her.
So would I.
But I don't know if I want it in like TV form. I wish they would make another film of it. Because you're right, the Bene Gesserits are the most interesting. That's not true. I love them all. I want to film on each planet, just like the comings and goings of each of these tribes. It's fascinating. All right, well, I feel like we've discussed Dune sufficiently. Do you say? Is there any other points you want to make?
I feel like maybe there is, but I might have to get back to you on that because for me it's been last night, so I'm still processing, I think. But overall, this is a great film, a very worthy sequel to the first one, and the first film in a long time. We're like, oh yeah, great, a good film at the cinema with a packed auditorium.
Yeah, which is such a relief given that after last year's strikes, there's been this huge knock-on effect. There aren't going to be as many big blockbusters coming out this year. So studios are very concerned about profits. And obviously there was this huge flop with Madam Web recently. Did you see it? I wasn't sure.
No.
Oh, no, so you haven't actually seen it. You're just very aware of the flop.
Very aware of it. Listened to and watched lots of reviews online, and also talked to some of my students who have seen it. So I can confirm, without having seen it, I'm almost 100% sure it's absolute hot garbage from what everybody, even including film school students, who they actually enjoyed it. But because it was so shit,
Oh my God. Well, yeah, I read that grossed around 70 mil worldwide, and and Dune Part 2 has grossed 80 mil in its opening weekend. So that just says it all, really. But anyway, it's a relief because we need these films to be a success.
We need good quality. Studios need to remember about making good quality things that there is an audience for, which Dune is a classic case of fulfilling that on both counts.
Absolutely.
Madam Web was the opposite. There was no audience for it, and it was made really, really badly. Oh. So how can anybody, a studio, think that'll definitely do well?
Yeah, you're right. It's just not thinking about who the audience actually is, but just having this vague idea of like stats and what might appeal to a demographic, right? Like
it's like what was it called? The 511, the 417 or something. Like there appears to be zero audience, as has been proven, that wants female-centric, female-led C-list, or not even C-list, D-list. Like, have you heard of Madam Web before? Who's heard of Madam Web?
I thought you were about to say Dakota Johnson's D-list.
No, she's a great actor.
How dare you? How very dare you?
Not at all. Completely underserved in this. Massively.
I mean, if it was well made and a good story, I don't think it needs to be. Does it need to be a well-known? I don't know. I mean, it's not. I'm not the market for it, but.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're not the market for it, but it was aimed at women, wasn't it? It was aimed at kind of. You're probably a bit older than their market, but the point is, like, nobody wanted to see this that they made. They completely misunderstood. I don't know who they thought they were making this for. But yeah, if it was well made, if Madam Web was well made, I probably still wouldn't go to see it because I'm like, it wouldn't have to just be well made for me to go to see it. It would have to be one of the best comic book movies of all time for me to go to see it, especially because it's of a DEF list character who I've never heard of. Like in superhero films, there has to be some brand recognition. I only give a shit about the big ones that everyone's heard of, like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, like, maybe Iron Man, Thor. But once it Madam Web, like, they thought, I think the studios just thought, oh, it's any old comic book character. Who gives a shit? People go and see it. When the audience are saying, we won't just go and see any old shit.
For me, the most interesting part of this film's run has just been seeing the red carpet looks of Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney, because they were both in Web-esque dresses. And I thought, God, the impact of Barbie on marketing of movies, like everyone now is leaning into the look of the film.
I see.
Because obviously Margot Robbie replicated every kind of Barbie for the press run for for the Barbie movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, they obviously were doing the same.
I hadn't clocked that the dresses they were wearing were webbed quite.
And with Dune as well, with Dune Part 2, the red carpet.
Oh my God, what Zendaya was wearing was amazing.
Yeah, on one of the red carpets, Zendaya wore this robotic style, like metal
from 1995
body.
Or something.
Right. Hey, so you know your fashion. And then on another red carpet, her and Timothée Chalamet were wearing matching jumpsuits. So they're very much echoing the look of the film again on these red carpets, and I like that. I like that kind of extension of the universe into fashion. I think it's quite fun. I'm here for it.
So will you be rocking your Dune-inspired outfits this weekend then, Lily?
Yeah, babe. I mean, I'm always doing that. I want to be like
No. Sorry, I keep forgetting. You're not Fremen. You're Bene Gesserit. I don't know why I'm messing with my own image there.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm the Florence Pugh in the of the. I like that little beaded head thing she wears.
Yeah.
You know, she looks cool.
It looks really cool. I was like, that was a beautiful piece of eye candy as I was watching it, just all the little kind of things going around the edge of it. Yeah. Beads. Thank you. Things. Well, no, they were like dangly bits. They were the beads that made it the main thing.
There's still beads that were dangling. Maybe crystals? Were they crystals?
I don't know. They felt like they were little bits of metal. Like they felt like.
Yeah, okay, you're probably right. Tassels? I'm going to keep throwing words out. Yeah, you're right. They were more like tassels. Yeah. Guys, look out for that. It's a strong point. Yeah, I mean, for me, my favorite thing, of course, is the Bene Gesserit's box headwear with the kind of cape. All the capey things. Oh, it's just all good stuff. It's the chicest known universe ever created.
Absolutely. A very stylish cinematic universe.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, shall we take a trip to the film pharmacy?
Yes, we're back. It's our first film pharmacy of Series 4, and we've got an interesting question here from a long-time listener. They say they have an incredibly shallow film pharmacy question. Me and my girlfriend are both bisexual, and to beat the winter blues, we gave ourselves a treat for the eyes by watching Closer, starring Julia Roberts, Jude Law, Natalie Portman, and Clive Owen. I wanted to know, what are your go-to eye candy films to get through the long winter nights?
Really? I love this question. Can I just say, you skipped over her saying "wow" in brackets after Clive Owen, which I
do apologise. I didn't mean to edit out the intention behind your message and misinterpret what you said.
It was just, I just really enjoyed it because it was brackets, wow, full stop, close bracket. Real emphasis there, and a very, very good choice. Yeah, Closer. Closer is a very interesting film. Like, I think we should probably do it at some point on.
Never seen it.
It's very interesting. I have very mixed feelings about it, so there's lots to talk about. But it is definitely a very sexy film. What is your? Wait,
hang on. You just turned that turnaround back on me, and now it's turned back around. Okay, wait, yeah. So what am I? So I have to say, it was a tough one for me to think. So I don't have a category in my head of eye candy films, although maybe I do, but I've classified it as something else in my own head. You know, like you do a folder on your PC, so no one go looking. Anyway. So I had a bit of digging, and I've got two because one of them we've already covered, and I'm sure our listener will be very familiar with the film if they've listened to our podcast as much as we think they have. Which is Bound, which is a very sexy film.
Great choice.
But I was thinking of something that we haven't covered before, which is a little bit eye candy, and I was thinking, oh yeah, here we go. For me, it would have to be Black Narcissus, the 1947 Powell and Pressburger psychological drama.
Oh my gosh, that is a very interesting choice. I love this choice. Now explain why this is an eye candy film for you. Maybe just give the listeners a very quick an overview of what it is. A log line.
It's about a group of nuns in a convent in the Himalayas, and one of them goes completely nuts.
Very hot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the upshot of it, though. Very sexy nuns.
Is that what it is? Sexy nuns? I've seen it, but I just don't really remember being aroused.
Well, I mean, Lena, what can I say? We're very different people, Lily.
But are they meant to be sexy? Is that the intention? You just find them sexy?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that for you, James. Love it. That's great. Okay, cool. So we're learning a lot about you today.
Maybe too much.
Okay, well, that's it for Film Part.
Well, hang on a sec.
Just kidding. I actually have quite a long list, so I'll rattle through them because some of them I've mentioned before. So Unfaithful, the Richard Gere, Diane Lane movie. It's like an erotic thriller that I find very sexy. Not Richard Gere. He's like the cuckolded husband at home. He's not that hot in it. He's fine. But the guy that Diane Lane gets with, who I think the last time I talked about it, I also didn't know his name. So sorry to that guy, but he's this very sexy, I believe, French, maybe Spanish. I think he was French. And they have a very hot time together. So that was always a go-to when I was younger. The thing I realized when I was thinking about this was these are all films I would watch quite regularly when I was, in my like sort of early 20s at like uni and stuff. I think I need a new one, basically. It's been a while, but we will later in the series be talking about 10 Things I Hate About You. And definitely Heath Ledger's smile in that film and the way he kind of tucks her, Julia Stiles' hair behind her ear. I think I'm repeating myself a little bit. That I find so hot. But then also in contrast, I find that movie Nymphomaniac by Lars von Trier quite hot.
Wow, I find it quite bleak. Kind of hot, but bleak.
I feel very ashamed of that because I know it's like very bleak. There's a lot of unpleasant things happening. And similarly, I have to say that Michael Fassbender in the film Fish Tank, there's a sex scene in that which is like the circumstances are terrible. But I can't help it. The way he is filmed, his body, oh my God, so hot. And also that movie Love by Gaspar Noe.
My God, you've got such a long list. I struggled here.
I know.
For you,
I did have a minute being like, I don't know. I can't think of the last film I watched that I found really sexy and like good eye candy. And then it just started flowing out of me. Because you must have seen that movie Love, the Gaspar Noe film about the love triangle. I'm surprised we didn't talk about it for our love triangle episode, actually. It's got Carl Glusman in, who is, I think, probably the most beautiful man ever. And then also these two really beautiful women, Aomi Muick and Clara Kristen. There's a threesome scene that's just...
Oh, okay.
It's a controversial film because they actually do have sex in it. And when it was in cinemas, it was love in 3D. And there's a shot with a bodily function, a male bodily function, which really makes use of the 3D camera. It's naff, almost camp, really. It's kind of ridiculous, but...
Would you say it's up there with Gravity for its use of 3D for storytelling purposes?
Absolutely. They're the two pillars. I think you need to watch it and then we can discuss because everyone watch it. It was a controversial film for sure. Gaspar Noe loves a bit of controversy, but I did find it very sexy. So yeah. I have others, but I'll stop there. I'll leave it at that. Okay, well, yeah, thank you to that listener for exposing us for the perverts that we are. I feel very exposed now.
I think you're going to have a lot of choices there, to be honest. Take your pick, please.
All right, well, that is it for another episode of Groovy Movies. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a like or a 5-star review, all of those things help get our podcast out to a bigger audience.
So we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Follow us on Instagram at Groovy Movies Pod or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
Groovy Movies was produced and edited by Lily Austin.
Music and sound by James Brailsford.
Our logo was designed by Abby-Jo Sheldon.
For references and more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.